Consortium is an advanced interface used to interact with a satellite capable of opening quantum rifts, allowing the user to travel to an alternate future Earth in the year 2042 and take direct control of an individual's motor functions while he's asleep, paid in large by Canadian tax dollars. Or that's at least the plot-relevant framing device the game uses. There's some sinister implications at play here, and even though it might not seem like it at first, the game is aware of this. The Canadian part is real though. Most of the game's funding came from a grant by the Canada Media Fund for 500,000 CAD. $500,000 for a game isn't a whole lot, and remember, this is Canadian dollars. When converted to people money, it's substantially less. You can tell by the visuals alone that this was made on a budget. It's easy to overlook the specifics and just assume Consortium takes place on our future Earth. However, that isn't the case. There's several historical differences between our world and this one, well before any timeline-altering effects the existence of this game might cause. To what extent you'll only find by delving deep into the game's lore. Through the Quantum Rift you'll be controlling Bishop 6, a security officer / special forces operator working for the international peacekeeping organization, the Consortium. Fortunately for you, it's the Bishop's first day, and he's only just met the crew he'll be working with, so they haven't gotten a chance to know the real him. That said, you're still expected to be a trained military officer, and asking questions about things Bishop 6 should already know will raise some eyebrows and a few concerns. Most people aren't going to be happy that the person in charge of security is either incompetent or playing dumb. On top of that, the AI leader of the Consortium and the one facilitating your connection to this world, the King, expects you to maintain the masquerade, at least to a degree. Why he'll allow you to inform some people but not others is a mystery that the game doesn't answer. The entirety of the game takes place confined to the Zenel, a technologically advanced jet plane that acts as a forward operating base for the Consortium. Some might be disappointed to find it's not a particularly large map, but there's enough to do and see that exploring it doesn't feel trivial, and the crew members aboard keep it lively. Before you've even gotten a chance to suit up, Zenel's weapons specialist, Rook 25, informs you that the ship is being hounded by a group of Bulgarian sky pirates who want to board mid-flight. Okay, so the Consortium has some obvious parallels to something like Starfleet, so I really shouldn't be surprised. It just seems a little out of place for such a grounded setting. It'd be a lot more fitting if the game took place in space or something. Not long after getting your bearings, you stumble across a dead body and it's quickly confirmed to be murder. As the Bishop on board, you're tasked with investigating who the perpetrator is, while also keeping the rest of the crew safe. You want to avoid getting on anyone's bad side while you're at it though. After all, these are people you're expected to be working with in the future. Before I get into the specifics, I wanted to mention a minor bug I came across with the resolution, in case anyone has similar issues. When I first booted the game up, the resolution was at my native 180p, but it wasn't scaling correctly. It doesn't really show in the recording, but that's why there's an offset on my cursor. Changing to a different resolution than back to 180p seemed to fix the problem though. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about what you'll be doing. Consortium places a heavy emphasis on narrative, so it's going to be difficult to talk about gameplay without also going over the story and writing. I won't reveal who the murderer is, and I'll avoid anything that feels too much like a spoiler. For the most part, Consortium plays like a dialogue-heavy adventure game. The game uses a multiple-choice conversation system and keeps track of individual characters' alignment towards you based off of what you say and do. You can change whether these disposition changes are shown to you or not in the IDGI1 configuration menu under Options. Other than trying to solve the murder mystery, there aren't a whole lot of puzzles or challenges you'll come across. There are, however, a few moments where you'll have to act quickly to avoid a bad outcome, and there is a mini-game where you'll need to shoot down planes to avoid a game over. Sometimes you'll be given secondary objectives to complete by the crew, but these more often than not will either be talking to someone else or doing basic tasks around the ship, such as repairing damaged components. With such a strong focus on conversations, it's important that the plot and characters are compelling. Unfortunately, Consortium has all-around great writing. The characters are memorable and distinct without coming off as caricatures, adding to the believability of the game's core premise. Conversations are dynamic with a natural flow, and you'll be rewarded for understanding a character's personality and mood. The mystery at the center of the game stays engaging to the very end, and you might find through some twists and turns that what's going on is more complex than you were initially led to believe. If you're not observant though, you might never find out who the murderer is. Having this kind of investigation driving the plot synergizes well with the dialogue system, and it's a smart way of making the most out of the game's limited assets, while incentivizing the player to critically engage with characters. Remember those Bulgarian pirates? Or when I said, for the most part, it plays like an adventure game? Yeah, unfortunately, there's the combat. It's clunky, with more than a dash of jank. There's some design decisions here I just can't get past, like how the range of the grenade launcher is less than the resulting explosion, or just how badly your vision distorts whenever you're hit. Combat is supposed to play like a tactical shooter, but there really aren't any options for engaging opponents intelligently, beyond ducking behind cover, waiting for the energy-draining nanites to repair your health and armor, and spamming grenades. Don't let enemies flank you, and hold choke points to deny their numbers advantage. Enemies have both a health and a stamina pool. If you reduce their health to 0, they're dead, but if you deplete their stamina, they'll be temporarily incapacitated. To permanently remove a threat without resorting to killing, you'll need to first knock your opponent out, then inject them with nanites at close range. Conventional weapons can reduce their stamina, but you're better off using purpose-built stun weapons if you prefer a non-lethal approach. Neat idea, but the execution is a little shallow. On the bright side, it's possible to completely avoid combat through dialogue choices, and it's not as bad as it used to be, thanks to some updates the developers released. If you don't play your cards right though, you're going to have to deal with a tough boss fight. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, this fight is complete bullshit, and I can't tell how much of that was intentional and how much of it was due to bugs. I'm only playing on medium difficulty, and I can barely chip away a fourth of their health. No matter what tactic or weapon I use, I just can't seem to do enough damage. Grenades don't even seem to register against them, and they can kill you in seconds. I thought maybe hit and run tactics would work, but no, they have regenerating health. The only times I've been able to beat them is when the AI just gives up. With a 4 to 6 hour playtime, Consortium isn't the longest game out there, but if just how many times I've mentioned choice and consequences is any indication, the game is worth replaying. Consortium boasts the cliché "every choice counts" tagline that's led to innumerable disappointment before, and the game will even admit that no matter what actions you take, you ultimately end up in the same position at the end. Bishop 6 ready to make a halo jump towards the next mission. This is just the first game in a planned trilogy, so they needed a consistent jumping off point for the next game. But even if the ending is the same, how you get there can feel wildly different. Depending on your actions and dialogue choices, conversations can branch out in different ways. You might also notice subtle details you overlooked before. Bishop 6 is expected to have a level of familiarity with the setting that you, the player, probably won't have on your first playthrough. With how dense the lore is, you might want to focus on understanding what's going on and where you fit into everything before giving the game a serious attempt. Consortium rewards exploration and experimentation, the kind you can't do playing the game only once. Some dialogue choices will lead to certain events down the line. Sometimes only making a mistake will give you that critical piece of information you need. Maybe you thought aggressively flirting with the married woman would be crossing a line, only to try it next time and find that her husband's into nitorare and she likes you. Not only is the game tracking if you perform certain actions, but the disposition characters have towards you will lead to different outcomes as well. Sometimes, characters will only talk to you if you're already on good terms, or other times, someone will make it known if they grew to dislike you. Once you beat Consortium, you'll be given a list of important actions you took, implying their significance in future games. Alright, I've touched on some of the technical issues present in Consortium, but there are a few more notable examples worth mentioning. And unlike before, I don't have any solutions for these. The game has a habit of crashing. Dialogue can cut out mid-sentence.
Your ass. And here he is now. You see?
Subtitles will constantly bug out, and background chatter isn't even given proper subtitling. There was also an occasion or two where the game acted as if though I performed two contradictory actions. And maybe worst of all, despite the subpar graphics, the game has horrendous load times, which is especially annoying when you take into account how the game expects you to experiment. So in conclusion, wait, what's that, King? Something about an ARG? No, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, he didn't like that. Aside from this one scene, it'd be pretty easy for a player not to realize that there is an ARG tied to this, which began 4 years before Consortium's release. Well, unfortunately, the King didn't warn the developers that Flash wouldn't be around forever. But the information from the ARG isn't completely gone. Every copy of the game comes with a folder called Discoveries. If you own Consortium on Steam, it'll be in the game's folder. GOG uses their goodies download system. You can also find it on the IDGI wiki, which I've linked below. The folder has all of the relevant media files from the ARG, as well as a PDF titled IDGI1 Discoveries, which summarizes the events of the ARG. It's also a 140-page long document. I'm going to try and remain as vague as possible while talking about this. I'm not sure if the prequel ARG you're half expected to have played counts as spoiler material, but I realize some people might want to play Consortium first without this information, and others might want to read it for themselves. If you want to skip this anyway, here's the obligatory timecode. To answer the obvious question though, how much does this add to the game? Well, for one, it provides a bit of background lore, while also explaining the history of the satellite that allows you to quantum leap. Most of this won't be contemporary for when the game takes place, but it'll provide insight into how this world is different than ours, as well as who certain groups are. For instance, you might assume that the often mentioned group, the Guardian Church, is a generic sci-fi religion. On a casual playthrough you might not realize they're a secular organization, with how the adherents act and all. But something makes me think that discrepancy was intentional. Additionally, the document informs you that there's more going on behind the scenes than you'd be aware of otherwise. It also recontextualizes Consortium's murder mystery, the theme of being uncertain who you can trust becoming more relevant. The background this document provides is weird, and comes off as more than a little heavy-handed. There's this quality to it that just gives off the impression that someone wanted to write fanfiction for real life. The way nations, societies, and people in general act feels so disconnected with reality, or their previous characterizations, so to speak. Everything is ideal and rational. It reads like something a stereotypical Redditor would dream about. For example, there's this massive push for clean energy and electric cars that goes uncontested. One day the entire world just decides Teslas are the future. Scientology is outlawed by nearly every government. Japan solves its reliance on food imports within a couple years. And Canada just allows itself to be invaded with zero resistance. Okay, that last one might not be too unrealistic, but you get my point. It was so frustrating reading through this document. I enjoyed Consortium's writing. I knew the developers could do better than this. And then, when I was just about ready to give up after 115 pages, there's something that made me realize there's a purpose behind this all. Stories and myths don't just exist to reflect our world, they help us orientate ourselves within it. Heroes inspire us. They teach us lessons about who we want to be and what's important to us. What if Achilles' rage was tempered by reason, and thus he avoided tragedy at Troy? Would our culture value logic more? What if Alexander lived a long life and created a sustainable empire? Would we value his conquest as much as we do now, or instead his civic planning? What if Enkidu was rewarded for killing the bull of heaven with eternal life? Would Gilgamesh have sought to escape death? And would we? There's something esoteric, something more sinister going on than you'd ever realize just controlling Bishop 6. Reading discoveries isn't requisite to enjoy the game, but it adds an additional layer of intrigue and mystery that you can muddle over while playing. And there might even be some questions from this document you can answer yourself in Consortium if you search thoroughly enough. At 75,000 words, Discoveries is literally a novel-length document. It could take you nearly twice as long to read it as it would to play Consortium. After reading it in its entirety, I understand why it exists. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like getting off so much context behind nearly 10 hours of reading is unreasonable. And then it goes on to suggest you use the in-game terminal to read up on some more lore. That said, this document has plenty of parts you can skip over without missing anything too crucial. A lot of the text was written to either explain the mechanics of the ARG, or give you contradictory information about two major players within the world, so you can form your own opinions. Here's a list of what felt to be the most relevant sections. It's still a lot of reading, but it's a little more manageable. Despite Consortium's numerous flaws, I can't help but recommend it. While it lacks polish, it offers a unique and compelling experience that rewards inquisitive players. Sure, the combat might be dull, and there isn't a variety of gameplay elements, but the writing and characters are worth suffering through the few boring moments. While a lot of games will tout how important player choice is, with Consortium, it feels like a core feature that all the other mechanics were built around. The more times I play it, the more layers I realize it has. After 5 playthroughs, I still feel like there's things I missed. The terminal alone is a wealth of reading material that, depending on how invested you are in the game's lore, is worth checking out. You can tell a lot of time and passion went into making this, and with so many unexplored mysteries left, I'm excited to see where the developers take the story. Consortium isn't for everyone, but if you're looking for a story-driven game, or enjoy solving mysteries, this is a solid choice.